Hi, I'm Bill Vennard, and welcome to 412. I'm beginning a series which probes the question, is there anyone out there? By anyone, I mean God. Does God exist? How do we know? In this first episode, before I launch into that question, I'll be laying out some investigative tools that I think will help guide us in our search for answers. Imagine the following scenario. Watch this. I think you'll enjoy it. So you're talking to a friend or a family member or maybe a coworker or classmate, whomever, and you're telling them something that you as a Christian believe about God, Jesus, the Bible, life, death, so on. And they look at you like you're from a different planet. The response might be something like, you believe what? Well, hopefully, unlike this guy, they don't run away from you. But when you encounter situations like that, how do you respond? How do you explain this to you? Do you just drop it and walk away? Maybe you've tried to explain, but they keep coming back and they have some good questions and you just don't know the answers to those questions. So what do? Well, if you've ever found yourself in a similar situation, rest assured, you're not alone. We have all been there at one time or another, myself included. So what do? Well, don't give up. There are answers to those questions. But you can prepare yourself ahead of time so you're ready to give them a reasonable answer. And at Equip 412, we want to help prepare you with tools to enable you to answer those questions, those often tough questions. The Apostle Peter wrote in 1 Peter chapter 3, "Have no fear of them, nor be troubled. But in your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect." So Peter said, have no fear of them, nor be troubled. And the Apostle Paul wrote, God gave us not a spirit of fear, but of power and love and self-control. So don't fear them, and don't focus on winning an argument. Don't get into an argument with them, but don't be afraid that you don't have an answer. Remember first and foremost, though, that your desire is to first honor Christ the Lord as holy. He is the one that you're serving. He is the one that you're speaking for and trying to lead people to. But as Peter said, always be prepared. So be prepared. Get equipped. That's what we want to help you do at Equip 412. So let's take a look at some helpful tools that we can learn to use for the purpose of our investigation into the evidence for God's existence, and tools that will help us to become prepared. I recently came across a book by a former Torrance, California Police Department detective by the name of J. Warner Wallace, titled Cold Case Christianity. As a former homicide and cold case detective, Wallace investigated murder cases and a number of high-profile cold case murders over his 25-year career. Having been an atheist his entire life, in 1996, after using his investigative skills to investigate the Gospels as potential eyewitness accounts to the life of Jesus, Wallace became a Christian. In Cold Case Christianity, he explains the skills he learned for investigating cold case murders and how he used them to investigate Christianity's claims. What he found convinced him beyond a reasonable doubt that Jesus is who he claimed to be, and that the claims behind Christian beliefs were true. So in his book, he shows his readers how these same skills can be used to investigate the existence of God, who Jesus is, his resurrection, the reliability of gospel witnesses, and the claims of Christianity in general. Now, the first tool or skill he mentions is to set aside your presuppositions. What's a presupposition? Basically, it's things taken as being true or factual and used as a starting point for a course of action or reasoning. Now, this would include everything that you know or have learned up to this point in your life. We all have a set of beliefs which have been formed over the span of our lives. Those beliefs, whether they're right or wrong, are formed or influenced by things like your family, your education, friendships, religion, lack of religion, and so on. Those beliefs, again, whether they're right or wrong, contribute to those presuppositions that we have that have been formed in us concerning a whole variety of things. Those beliefs develop in us the system of values that you and I have come to live by. Sometimes these things are referred to as your worldview. They guide your life. They shape your opinions. They've come to form in you the ideas and opinions that you hold, and along with that, certain presuppositions. Whenever we enter into a discussion or debate, there are several things we should understand that we need to remember. First, we all have certain biases and presuppositions. Second, when it comes to discussing or debating issues such as faith or philosophical beliefs, it's hard to do that without allowing those presuppositions to influence us. And third, as hard as it may be, we should at least attempt to set aside our presuppositions as best we can. Can we do that perfectly? No, that would be impossible. It's taken a lifetime for us to acquire those presuppositions, so it's hard to just set those aside. I get it. We can't just wipe those things from our memory, but we can at least try to hold them in check and be as objective as possible as we attempt to seek out and examine the evidence. Detective Wallace learned that he had to do that when it came to examining the evidence in homicide and cold cases. Otherwise, any presuppositions he might have held going into an investigation could very easily have led him away from discovering just who the real suspects or suspect might be. So let's do our best to try to be as objective as we can and try to set those presuppositions aside. Another tool is what Wallace refers to as abductive reasoning. Abductive reasoning. What is that? Well, it is basically inferring to the most reasonable explanation. So it's not just looking to discover things that may seem possible, because whatever our imaginations might dream up could be deemed possible. We can conceive all kinds of possible explanations, but what we're looking for is the most reasonable explanation. In his book, Speaking as a Trained Detective, Wallace writes, "We collected all the evidential data and made a mental list of the raw facts. We then developed a list of possible explanations that might account for the scene in general. Finally, we compared the evidence to the possible explanations and determined which explanation was, in fact, the most reasonable, or the most reasonable conclusion, the most reasonable inference in light of the evidence." So, the evidence is gathered, explanations for that evidence are given, all of the explanations for the evidence gathered are carefully weighed and considered, then the most reasonable explanation out of all that evidence is decided. This is a common approach used in many disciplines. Scientists, geologists, archaeologists, historians alike all take this approach. So this is not something new. When it comes right down to it, we must separate what may seem possible, or in some cases, what is speculation, from what seems to be the most reasonable. As an example, I might say to someone that the watch on my left wrist just appeared there and I have no idea how it got there. Well, that person might say, well, I suppose that's possible. But a more rational response would probably be, that's not a reasonable explanation. However, a reasonable explanation could be this. I've never owned an expensive watch in my life. I've always worn something like a Timex. But I woke up one morning with this beautiful Cartier watch on my wrist. Had no idea how it got there. So when I went down to breakfast that morning, I told this to my wife, and she replied, "Oh, happy birthday, dear. I slipped it on you while you were sleeping." Ah, what I initially said about the watch did not seem reasonable. But once more facts were discovered, it became reasonable, given that I was sleeping when the watch appeared, and also that my wife was involved. By the way, I don't own a Cartier watch. I never have, and I never will. And even if I could afford it, my wife would never buy me a Cartier watch. Look at the price comparison there. I still wear a Timex. So we must seek out as many facts as we can and objectively examine them, laying aside presuppositions or biases as best we can to better determine if something is merely possible versus what is the most reasonable. Okay. A third tool that Detective Wallace used during his investigation was a tool of thinking circumstantially. Thinking circumstantially. Well, what does that mean? I'm glad you asked. According to Detective Wallace, it means that there are mainly two types of evidence: direct evidence and circumstantial evidence. There are other types of evidence often used or referred to in court cases, but these are the main two. Contrary to common opinion, both direct and circumstantial evidence are admissible in a court of law. Direct evidence is evidence that can prove something on its own. So let's say, for example, an example of direct evidence would be if I was standing by the window in my office waiting for my 9 a.m. counseling appointment to arrive, when I looked at my watch to see that it was 8:55 a.m. and noticed that it was raining outside. Now, I could testify that it was 8:55 when I looked at my window and I saw it was raining. That would be direct evidence. And an example of circumstantial evidence. Okay, so first of all, circumstantial evidence does not prove something on its own, but points us in the right direction by proving something related to the question at hand. For example, was it raining at 9 a.m.? Do I have direct evidence? Yes. In one scenario, I saw it raining as I looked out my window. But what about circumstantial evidence? All right, let's consider this. Let's consider in this scenario, assume my office has no outside window. I can't see outside my office to see what's going on outside. But my client walks into my office soaking wet, kind of like this guy here. I could at least testify that it must have been raining because when my client arrived at the scheduled time, he was wet. His clothes were wet, his hair was wet, his shoes was wet, and he was carrying an umbrella that apparently didn't do much good that was dripping water. That would be circumstantial evidence. Do you see the difference between direct evidence and circumstantial evidence? In this case, could I testify that I had actually seen it raining? No. Did I have direct evidence that it was raining outside? No, I did not. But the circumstances of his appearance implied that he had either just come in from the rain or had just walked through a car wash. One is reasonable, and although one may be possible, it's not reasonable. Circumstantial evidence. Okay, so let's review. See if you can get them all right. What's the first tool in our investigative toolbox? Set aside your presuppositions. As difficult as that may be, we need to try to remain objective. What's the second tool that we looked at? Do you remember? Abductive reasoning. Abductive reasoning. And what was the third tool in our toolbox? thinking circumstantially. Now, under that tool, what two types of evidence did we examine? Think about it. Direct evidence, and what was the second one? Circumstantial evidence. I'll be referring to those from time to time in coming weeks, and I'll be referring occasionally to some other types of evidence in the coming weeks. So how did you do? Okay. Did you get 3 right, 2 right, 1 right? All right, that brings us to, is there anyone out there? The stage is set for us to begin examining that question. And that's where we'll begin next time. In the next episode, I will begin to explore the existence of God, asking, is there anyone out there? Does God exist? Humanity has been asking those questions for millennia. And we'll start by examining what's called the cosmological argument, or put another way, the existence of the universe as proof for God's existence. But let me just give you a very brief overview of the cosmological argument, or the universe as evidence for the existence of God. The argument goes something like this. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause for its existence. Okay, and notice, must have a cause. Whatever begins to exist must have a cause. That leads us to premise number 2. The universe began to exist. It began to exist as opposed to always existing. Now, let me go back. In premise 1, it says something begins to exist, and premise 2 says the universe began to exist. Those phrases are going to be important. Now, this leads us to our conclusion. Therefore, the universe must have a cause for its existence. Okay, premise 1, whatever begins to exist must have a cause for its existence. Premise 2, the universe began to exist. And the conclusion, therefore, is that the universe must have a cause for its existence. Using our investigative tools, does that seem possible? Yes. Does it seem reasonable? I think so. Next time I'll break those down and we'll examine each piece. Before you go, would you do me a favor? Please take just a few minutes to investigate some of the other things available to you here at Equip 412. Especially check out the resources and links page, where you'll find links to some very helpful and encouraging websites focused on apologetics, as well as some really good books by a variety of authors who specialize in apologetics for your further study. So dig into those. And just a reminder, most books I mention in any of my vlog posts will be available for purchase on my resources and links page. You just go there and click on them and you can purchase them right there. Also, would you please consider joining the Equip 412 team? How do you do that? Go to the website and click on subscribe. When you subscribe, you'll be able to download for free 2 chapters of my new book, Be the Difference. It contains lessons for becoming a no-compromise 21st century difference maker in God's kingdom. I think you'll be challenged by it, and folks, I think in our day and age, the need of the hour is for no-compromise difference makers in God's kingdom. So look into that, would you? Check it out. Download those 2 free pages. If you found us through Facebook, please click like and share, and please consider following Equip 412. Also, you can go to YouTube and then just type in Equip 412 in the search area, or just type in my name, Bill Bernard, and that'll take you to the YouTube channel, where I have additional videos posted by some more experts in apologetics that will provide you with more tools in your toolbox. Remember, the website is equip412.com, And if you want to drop me an email, it's billv@equip412.com. Hey, I want to thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I hope you'll continue on with us for further episodes. Normally, I will post a new vlog on Tuesdays of each week. So please feel free to leave a comment after you watch a posting, or leave a question in the comments section, and I will get back to you. I only ask that your comments are courteous and respectful. Don't forget to join us for the next episode of Equip 412. So until next time, always be prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you, yet do it with gentleness and respect. Thank you again for watching. God bless you, and I hope to see you again soon.